Good drainage in the worm system is very important. Here we've opted to put some bird netting just over the drainage hole and hold it down with some rocks. That should be enough rather than use glue or silicone as other people do. As an extra precautionary, well, it will act like an extra filter, I'm going to put some sand just over the spot here. The reason for that is, whilst the worm system is in action, obviously the water and worm castings at times will fall down to the bottom and it could potentially clog up the drain, so I'm going to put a load of sand there which will act as like a coffee filter in a way. So the worm tea should pass through and drain out, but all the bigger chunks should be left around the outside, so therefore our system won't block up. Well, that's the hope anyway. We'll see if that actually works. It's coming along quite well. As you see, it's up on a couple of blocks to keep it up off the ground, just for ease of access. I've added 3 bags of garden pebbles, maybe about 3 or 4 centimeters in depth. That's to improve drainage. And I've also added this cord, just a recycled material which I got from the old screen door which I'm using. This cord has been glued on just so it makes it harder for worms to escape if they do wander up here and try to get out. Okay, the next step here is to lay this sheet of weed matting on top of the pebbles, and what that does is creates a barrier between the worms and the castings and the pebbles so that it doesn't all mix up together, which will make it easier to harvest the castings later on. Now if the worms pass through the weed matting, which they probably will, they have the ability to then crawl up through the rocks, crawl up the sides and come back into the worm farm itself. In some other systems, if the worms do drop down, they end up drowning. Okay, the next step in setting up this worm farm is to add some bedding. So with this first layer, and for no particular reason other than I had it on hand, I've decided to use coconut coir. It's a sustainable resource, and yeah, apparently it makes a good bedding, so I've decided to use that. However, I'm also going to use a range of materials. I'm going to put cow manure in there as well as some soaked shredded cardboard. That way I'm hedging my bets, to provide as comfortable bedding as possible for these worms. As this is my first major worm farm, I'm not sure exactly what method works the best, but I'm going to combine coconut with manure and cardboard rather than just go with straight manure as some other people do, which I'm sure works fine, but I'm going to try this out. Okay, next up I'm adding a layer of soaked shredded cardboard as the bedding. It's important to create a bedding that is aerated. So I'm going to mix up some bulky material into the bedding. And the worms, they love crawling through in between the bits of cardboard. It's a good home for them. And plus they eat it as well. And next I've got this big pile of well composted leaves that we picked up from the side of the road not too long ago, as well as some cow manure and some banana skins and some sticks. As I said, this is the first time I've done a bath worm farm system, so it's a bit of an experiment. But I've got to give a shout out to Rob Bob, whose bath worm farm has inspired this design. So thanks very much for that. So this actually doesn't smell too bad. There's a mixture of cow poo, rotting leaves, banana skins. Yeah, it's pretty neutral, considering it's been outside rotting for a while. You'd expect it to potentially smell a bit worse, but I try to keep the carbon to nitrogen ratio well in the favour of the carbon, so lots more leaves and matter like that, and only a little bit of like kitchen scraps like banana skins and peels. I've just got a little bit more cow manure left over. I'm just going to throw that in as well. It's well composted. I'd imagine it means it's been in this bag for a long time. I've had it open for probably a month or so. Either way, it's going in, whether they like it or not. Other people talk about using horse manure, but I'm just going to go with cow manure. Spread that around. And I think that'll pretty much do it for the bedding. Next up, we just add worms. Okay, now we're going to add the worms from their existing farm into their new home, which is Wormville. Okay, it's pretty hard to see them.
Especially you.
But they're there.
Put some light.
There we go. And enjoy your new home. Time to get the rest. The worms have been moved into their new home. And there's a whole range of cardboard, food scraps, coconut coir, and cow manure in here. Literally just taken it from the old home and emptied it in here. So as you can see, there's quite a lot of worms that were on the bottom but now are on the top. So there we go. Go find a new place to hide. Okay, and just to finish off, we're going to put the lid on. Which was an old screen door that we got from the salvage yard. We cut it down with cut it to size with a hacksaw, and stuck it back together with some L frames. We've added some weave matting, quite a few layers of that, just to keep the light out, and I think it fits quite well. Got a bit of extra material that hangs over the side, just to keep the light out. Okay, it's not a perfect job. We can fine-tune a few little things, but does it work? I think it works really well. That's good night to the worms. Okay, that's more or less the finished bathtub worm farm, or Wormville. That's Yoda. Oh, we just need to add the bucket. Could you please do that, Machete?
To add the bucket?
Yeah.
This one?
Yeah, that one there. Yeah, so we've set this bathtub up in the shed. It's important to keep the underneath the wrong side.
Yes,
That's the one. There we go. Great. As you can see, it's on a bit of a slope. That way, when you add moisture, the water is going to trickle down to the lower level and run off into the tub, which will be collected there, and we'll put that into the garden. $50. So it wasn't super cheap, as you can see, and it was quite difficult to salvage an old bath. I'd been looking for quite a while, but I found this one. It was $50. I talked him down to $40. Got a few of these blocks. I think they were $3 each. Got this old screen door, which was $13. Had to buy a few materials to cut that down, and that's about it, plus a few hours of our time. Hope the worms appreciate it. If it goes well, we'll probably do another one.